he always wants us to always position ourselves in a way that if he says, Mary, we can actually hear him and go, ooh, yes, Lord. You see all those spots in the Bible where God calls, like, here I am, whoever, here I am, Lord, send him. It's kind of like that, all that kind of stuff. There's other inferences to other things that you could, study in the Word of God and all that kind of stuff. The miraculous provision. The idea of the glory is not so much the miraculous part of it, though it is miraculous, it's the abundance of it. Part of the definition of that word kabod that we looked at is the abundance, an abundance of something. And it also indicates the Sabbath rest that we're entering into. But we're not going to get into any of that kind of stuff. Let's just continue to read in the 16th chapter. 6 and 7.
So Moses and Aaron said to all the sons of Israel, at evening you will know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your grumblings against the Lord. And what are we that you grumble against us?
So it's clearly stated there that what's going on here now, this is the first time that the glory of the Lord is mentioned. You're going to see the glory of the Lord. Then 9 and 10.
Then Moses said to Aaron, say to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your grumblings. And it came about, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the sons of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud.
And then down to 15.
When the sons of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, it is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat.
It's abstract. It's hard to put into words. What is it? That's really what manna means, is what is it, literally. You shall see. That's what they're told, and they do. Even though, if you remember the very first thing Russ read, they were complaining. This did not start from a place of a worship service and all of a sudden this bread comes down. It didn't start there at all. They weren't worshiping God at all. In fact, they're really giving Moses and Aaron a hard time, which is the same as giving God a hard time, because God's the one that put them in charge. So if you give them a hard time, this is a rule, by the way, with authority. People who are in authority positions, God has them there in authority positions. You come against authority, you come against God. It's kind of like the way it works. At least that's what we're taught from cover to cover. That God's really big on authority figures. It puts a lot of responsibility on an authority figure as a representative of God and how you represent him, how you treat your employees or whatever it might be. And I like this, because I think God gets an incredibly bad rap all the time, personally. I really believe that. Seriously. Because they're moaning and complaining. Anybody here like moaners and complainers? When we're around a moaner and complainer, we try to do what? Distance ourselves. Because you just don't need it. Would you just give it a break? There's so many... And what does God say? Come on, come near. Only God would call a complainer closer to himself, which we don't. It just is one more thing about us that we're a little bit different than God that way. He says, come near. We're told that the glory appears in the cloud, which is just a beautiful picture of the ultimate cloud of witnesses, that this is where we are going. The cloud of witnesses has been forming for a long time. In Elijah's day, when he sees the cloud the size of a man's fist, and then we're told in Hebrews 12, talking about the cloud of witnesses. We've said this all along, though, that the glory God has reserved to give. That's what it says, the Lord has given. So now we can fast forward to John 6 and hold all that from Exodus 16. As you're going there, I want to just refer to the test once again. Because remember, in Exodus 16, the test was, will they walk according to my word?
He humbled you and let you be hungry and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, that he might make you understand that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by everything that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord.
Now that's important, because it doesn't say man does not live by bread. It says bread alone. And obviously, we need food, we need bread. But man does not live by that alone. God knew that they were in the wilderness, they were hungry, they needed to eat, of course. Just like all of us here, we've got needs. Jesus makes it very clear to us, don't worry. And there's not a one of us in here who probably doesn't worry on occasion. what you'll eat, what you'll wear, what you'll, that kind. And he says, don't worry, which is a nice way of saying, trust me. I know what you have need of. I am a God full of glory. All my goodness is available. You've got nothing to worry about if you trust me. If you don't trust me, that's when the hurt begins. Because if you don't trust him, you'll find somebody else, something else to trust. And once you do that, we are very quickly moving away from the glory, which is all of his goodness, towards something else. And there's a world of pain down that road. The test, will they walk according to my word? Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word. Position yourself to hear the Lord speak. So we get to John 6. And this isn't the law of the first, but it is a first. John is the one that gives us all the compound I ams. I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world, I am the door, I am the good shepherd, I am the true vine, I am the way, the truth, and the life, I am the resurrection. He's the one that gives us all those I ams all over the place. This is the first one in John 6, where Jesus is going to say, I am the bread of life. We're not going to read the whole chapter. John 6 begins with the feeding of the 5K. But you'll notice, if you remember the story, he asks Philip a question that he's not really looking for an answer for because he knew what he was going to do. It was a test. That word should jump out at us again. This was a test. Exodus 16, that was a test. Now we're in John 6. This is a test. By the time he finishes the feeding, the conclusion of 5,000 is that this is the prophet that Moses talked about. And they're right. He is the prophet, but he's much more. The glory of the Lord is much more than the prophet, prophetic ministry, whatever. The glory of the Lord is much, much, much bigger. Philip actually, when you read the account, he gives us what I call a Genesis 3 and 42 answer, which means this, that in Genesis 3, following the fall, we're told as part of, quote, the curse, if you would, although it's not a curse on man, but we're told that the ground's going to bring forth thorns and thistles, and that you're going to work like an animal, and in the sweat of all your labors, you're going to eat bread. So Philip, when he's asked, is thinking immediately of that kind of bread. Because you're going to feed hungry people, you need bread, right? So he's gravitating towards that there's not enough bread in all the supermarkets around this valley that we could, buy enough bread. That's kind of where he goes. And also, in connection with that, which we're going to see, that when I say Genesis 42, do you remember when there's a famine in the land and Jacob says they've got bread down in Egypt, and he sends his sons down to Egypt to get bread? I'm not saying that that's bad necessarily, but someplace along the line it would have been kind of nice to just have a prayer offered up. Instead of making a determination, I know, we'll go to the world. Because that's what Egypt is a sign of. Now this is kind of like serious stuff, because I do see a disease in the church, and even in my own life at times, I'm not excluding myself like some holy man or something, where instead of going to God, I know, I'll go there. I'll read that book. I'll do this, I'll do that. And it is really like going to Egypt and putting our trust in Egypt. And that's kind of where Philip is coming from. He does not say back to Jesus, I haven't a clue, number one, what you're talking about. Never has man seen a feeding of 5,000. And Jesus could have said, well, not for anything. I fed you guys in the wilderness for 40 years with rain from the sky. So let's not go there. Let's not talk about what's possible and what's not. When the glory of the Lord is there, all things are possible. And the things that you'll see happen are outside your realm. They don't happen in your context, in your time, in your matter, the way it comes from outside. It says that they rain down manna from heaven. Got to get a context for that. So what is that about? That's a good time to say, I don't know. I just know God did it. It was a demonstration of his glory. Why? So he can show us, if he can rain down bread from heaven for 40 years, you're worried about your RG&E bill? Relax. Something will happen that he'll intervene on our... We're his kids. He didn't want them to starve in the wilderness. He wanted to teach them a lesson. about trust, so they would listen to him. It's so simple, it's ridiculous. We do this as parents all the time with our kids. We want to teach them lessons so they learn when they're about to run out in front of a car and you yell stop, they actually stop, instead of getting hit by a car. We're always trying to do that with our kids, and all we want them to do is to really listen to us, because we know what we're talking about. They're like simple stories, quite frankly. But what happens to the story, it gets invaded by the glory of God, and that's when we get this kind of thing that goes, huh? And it's good that we should be that kind of mesmerized by it, if you would. Philip does not give him Isaiah 55. He tells him that this is ridiculous, basically. He's thinking Egypt. He's thinking we can't grow this much bread this quickly. It's Genesis 3. That whole side of the bread issue. Isaiah 55, verses 1, 2, and 3. If anybody has it, just read it.
Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk, without money and without cost. Why do you spend money for what is not bread, and your wages for what does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me, and eat what is good, and delight yourself in abundance. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen that you may live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, according to the faithful mercy shown to David.
It's such an interesting passage. Come and buy without money. Invest something, but you don't need to spend money. You do need to spend something. Come and buy, but it's not money. Your worldly ways are not going to buy the spiritual ways that God has for us. You're not going to buy a word from God. You can buy a word from any prophet in America, I guarantee you that. There's websites you can go on that, word for the day, $12. Why are you spending your money on things that don't buy anything that's worth anything, quite frankly? It just becomes interesting, the whole thing. But that would have been kind of like the answer. We need to go to God on this one. If we're going to feed 5,000 people, we're going to need to go to God, because he's the only one that's going to be able to do that. And the good news is, you don't have to. I'm right here. You don't have to go to me. I've come to you. Hello. And I will show you the truth in that statement. I will reveal the glory of the Lord just the same way as the glory of the Lord was revealed in Exodus 16 in the wilderness. I will provide. And it's only for an afternoon for 5,000. I did it for millions for 40 years. So this is kind of like a smidgen compared to the glory that was revealed to my children in the past. Come, buy, eat what is good. Eat of my goodness, of the glory. Eat all the goodness.